Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire to Inspire. This show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewire to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to my podcast, Rewire to Inspire. I'm giggling because I'm using a new microphone, and if you guys knew the amount of time that I spent setting this up before, and it's embarrassing because it's literally just, you plug it in, but to get my computer to pick up this USB has been very interesting. So we are in good spirits. And I'm just hoping and praying that the quality of this microphone is better than the previous ones I've had. This is my this is my fourth microphone since I've started my podcast. So fingers crossed that this one supports us for at least a year. And then we'll reassess from there. But nonetheless, you guys, hello, welcome back. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We welcome you with open arms. If you are tuning back in, welcome back to this space. I am so excited to have you back here for another episode of Rewire to Inspire. We're doing episode 139 today. You guys, I had a memory pop up on Facebook the other day of announcing episode 37, and I was like, holy smokes. It's insane to me how quick time is going. But also to have just that comparison for myself of a year's difference in what can really happen in a year's time. And so, although it doesn't really have anything to do with today's episode, I do just want you guys to bring into your consciousness, like, imagine what could happen in a year's time if you started something today and you stuck with it and you stayed consistent and you didn't give up, even on the days that were hard. Imagine what your life could look like. What's maybe one area of your life that you can begin to show up consistently? When we try to show up in every area of our life consistently, that's when we burn out, that's when we give up. But if you can pick one area and really lean into it and be consistent, not only are you going to inevitably get results eventually, but you're showing your brain that it's possible to stick with something long enough. When we don't have any awareness or reps to show ourselves that we can do something, it's harder to have that belief. We can believe it for other people, but we don't believe it for ourselves. And so I wanted to just share that with you guys in coming on today's episode of even announcing that it's episode 139, because at one point it was episode 1, and then it was episode 2, and then we grew, but it has to start with the first rep. So nonetheless, you guys, I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Happy July. Can we talk about the fact that it's July for a minute and that we are already in summer, although the weather here where I live does not seem to understand that. We've got nothing but rain and clouds. There's like little glimpses of sunshine, but overall it's been the most spring summer ever here. But I have hope that the rest of the summer is going to be beautiful. Without further ado, what you're all here to actually talk about, 3 common reasons people burn out working from home. Even saying the words working from home, so many of us are probably like, oh my God, I don't want to talk about it. But here's the thing. We're not talking about the pandemic here. We're talking about reality now and moving forward. Because I would suspect that working from home is just going to be a normal thing from now on. And although these 3 common reasons people burn out are things you might know, just because we know something doesn't mean we actually remember it consciously. Just because something seems like common sense doesn't mean that it doesn't affect us. And so I wanted to shed light on 3 of these reasons that people burn out, because you might not even realize that you're in the pool of burnout. You might not recognize that these 3 things are affecting you. And so I wanted to shed light on these because I am so blessed that I get to kind of choose when I'm going to work from home, when I'm going to go into the office. I absolutely adore the flexibility of my job. I also know that not everybody has that flexibility, and some of us are either strictly in office or strictly from home. But nonetheless, I think we could all really benefit from learning some of these reasons we all burn out. So I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about my experience and how this impacted me during the pandemic, but how a lot of this is also still affecting me now. Even though I do get to choose, like I said, when I go into office, when I stay home, I still feel this one very heavily. And so during the pandemic, my role at that time was working one-on-one with folks who had been affected by sexual assault, domestic violence, abuse. And during this time, I had a really, really, really hard time disconnecting from my work. And although this work is a little bit, I guess, unique in the way of what I was doing, I do think a lot of us experience that feeling of not being able to disconnect from your work. And so I felt like every time I walked by my office, I'd be thinking about clients. Every time I would go into that space, and I lived in a small 3-bedroom apartment. Now, I know when I say 3 bedrooms, it sounds like it's pretty big. The rooms were not. You couldn't fit a double bed in there, in 2 of the rooms that my office was occupying. And every time I would walk in that space to do other things after hours, or even just to walk by, my mind would go to work. And I had a really, really, really hard time disconnecting from work Jessie and then life Jessie. And I think all of us experience this to some degree. And even now, if you're back to work but you did work from home during the pandemic, I feel like that was kind of ingrained in us in a way to have that challenge of disconnecting from your work and from home. And I think we all experience this to some degree, regardless of the pandemic or not. We form an identity around what it is that we do, around our work, around our jobs, around our careers, especially if our heart is in it. And we can have a really hard time disconnecting from it. And I do truly believe that this is one of the main reasons why we burn out, is because our mind isn't able to go into that rest and reset mode. It is constantly just cycling, thinking about what's to come, what's to do, clients, outstanding emails, meetings. Our head is just constantly turning and trying to focus on something. And so having that inability to disconnect isn't allowing us to have the most optimal quality of life. And although I loved what I did, and I love what I do now, I don't want to think about it 24/7. You need to love what you do, but you don't need to love what you do so much so that it's consuming 100% of your brain power. I truly think that that's why we lose so many great workers, so many efficient workers, is because not because they don't care about what they're doing, but if we're unable to disconnect and balance out having a strong quality of life outside of work, inevitably over time we're going to burn out. And so one thing that I found super, super, super helpful for this one is associating a space with being workspace and only workspace. And so when we don't associate a space as a workspace, our mind isn't able to have that disconnect. And so for me, what I should have done, instead of going back into my office at the end of the day to work on my business, I needed to be working in a different space. I needed to be going outside. I needed to bring my laptop somewhere else other than the space that I was doing my work reps in. Because our mind is very, very good at correlating and associating things together. It's the same with like classical conditioning with dogs. When they hear a bell, if you ring a bell and give a dog a treat, after a while of ringing that bell, they're just going to associate that with having a treat. It's classical conditioning. We are no different. When we begin to associate a space with an experience, with a thought, with an action, with a habit, that is actually the cycle of habits, right? We have that cue, we have that trigger. If your space is triggering a cue, your mind's already predetermined where its head has to go to. I know as soon as I step into my office, it's work time, it's work mode, it's flow time. I don't want to have that same feeling when I walk into my bedroom or when I walk into my living room. And so I think a large reason why people burn out is because you're not identifying spaces as workspaces. AKA, don't do your work from your bed. Don't do your work from your couch. I know that all of our living spaces are unique and individualized, and I know we might not all have necessity to these things or to have an office space, but try as best as possible to keep your work in one space as best as possible. Now, obviously, there's times where I enjoy working outside and I feel like I've been able to kind of hold that duality, but every single day, it's so important that we have that routine set place. Because what I found super helpful to help me disconnect at the end of the day is I would physically close my office door and I'm like, I'm leaving work behind me now. I'm closing the door. When we work from home, we don't have that distance of driving home, of going through that routine of like gathering your stuff and leaving work at work. And like I said, driving home, going home and having a new space. When our space and scenery hasn't changed, it's hard for our mind to switch into a different way of being, to switch from work mode to life mode. I know exactly what it's like to not know where to turn, to feel alone, helpless, and stuck. My goal as a coach is to help clients from a trauma-informed perspective see your worth and develop self-belief so you may chase your dreams and trust your intuition to live the most aligned, fulfilling life possible. If you're looking to elevate your life to the next level but aren't sure where to start, I would absolutely love to connect. If you're feeling pulled or curious, please use the link in the show notes below to book your free call. I look forward to connecting and supporting you on your own unique journey. And so on top of this one thing that I found very, very helpful is when I'm done my workday, changing my scenery, going for a walk. I started going for drives during the pandemic when we were in the heat of the pandemic and we couldn't really do anything. I found that after a long day, if I went for even a 5-minute drive, my mind was able to disconnect my home with being work. And so I do truly believe that that is one of the main reasons why we burn out, is because we have this inability to disconnect from what it is that we're doing. And so right now, you listening, I encourage you to ask yourself, 0 to 10, how well are you able to disconnect at the end of the day? Do you have healthy tools that allow your mind to shift from one state to the next? Or do you find yourself constantly reminiscing about work, thinking about the next day, thinking about the previous day, thinking about all that needs to be done? Obviously, there's multiple underlying factors at stake here. However, if you are someone specifically working from home, I would suspect that one of the main reasons why you might be feeling burnout is because your mind isn't able to disconnect from the work that you are doing. The second reason that you might be feeling burnout working from home is that you're missing support. You're missing connection. You're missing coworkers. And again, that change of scenery. A supportive environment is missing for you. When we work in isolation, aka working from home, it can be the biggest blessing, but also the biggest curse. It can be fantastic in some ways, but it can also be very detrimental to our mental health and well-being. Working from home can make you feel like you have no one to really turn to. I remember my last office job, the amount of fun I would just have with my coworkers in between clients, just goofing around, doing silly things, having mindless conversations, being able to just have that fun connection. But when you work from home and you're solely with yourself and your computer and your phone, our mind knows that. It knows that it's not getting a genuine connection. And I know some of us are going to say, well, I'm more introverted and I don't really care if I'm around people. we are wired beings to be around other people and to connect physically with other people, not through a screen. Although, yes, the screen is great and technology is great because it allows us to be efficient, and I wouldn't be able to be a part of the team that I'm on if it didn't exist, knowing that we still need human connection. And I think a large reason why we burn out is because we think we're getting that connection because we have all these meetings and we're tired at the end of the day, but we're not recognizing that there's burnout and then there's being tired. What if your body's actually saying, I need a genuine connection? Depending what your home life is like. For me, I was, ending the day and I'd be by myself. And it got really, really lonely. Last winter was excruciating for me. It was so painful. Although I get to see people every now and again, I just felt so alone and so isolated. And I just kept telling myself that I was fine. It's just a part of life. It's just work. Like, it'll get better. It didn't get better until I consciously forced myself to get around people and to make those genuine connections. So that is the second reason that you might be burning out, is that supportive environment is missing. Think of a job that you had that you were surrounded by coworkers that just made you laugh, made you smile, made you happy. It's also that common ground of understanding what it is that you're going through. When we're able to go in the lunchroom and chat with our coworkers about what's going on, just that in and of itself is so fulfilling for our nervous systems. But when we don't have that day in and day out and day in and day out, we can get so used to not having that we can forget the significance of it. So I encourage you, if you've held both dualities and both truths, where you've worked in person in a space and then you've also experienced maybe isolating working from home, I encourage you to ask yourself, don't you miss that connection? Don't you miss being around other people? And how can you maybe begin to, now that things aren't on lockdown, maybe go work at a coffee shop instead if you can. Maybe if some of your coworkers are local, ask them if they want to get together and have a work day together. There are so many ways that we can get creative now with this, but I do truly think that one of the biggest reasons that we start to feel burnout and we want to take a step away is because we're missing connection. When we start to just feel like a worker, like a robot, just we're going through the motions, life is about so much more than that. Quality of life is about so much more than that. And if you've just begun to feel like you are just this inserter of information, or just, like I said, a robot is the best word I can think of, inevitably you're gonna start to feel that. Your mental health is gonna take a hit because of that. And so finding ways that you can create a supportive environment and get around people as much as possible is going to be huge for supporting you in feeling burnt out. Okay, the last reason. This is a shorter episode today because, again, we all intuitively know all these things. I just want to remind us to disconnect, remind us to have that connection with other people, remind us of the importance of bringing awareness to if you are burnt out. Maybe you are in a workplace every single day, but you're still feeling burnt out. It could still be because of these reasons. I look around and I just see everybody, not everybody, but a large majority of people just struggling so much with getting out of bed in the morning, having a really hard time showing up. And I know that a large part of that is because we're unfulfilled, but I think that the pandemic burned us out more than we realized. Psychologically, we have to understand and validate the toll that took on us. And until we validate that, the cycle is going to continue to perpetuate. And think about how much we're mirroring that onto other people. And so when is it going to be time for someone to kind of step ahead and stand up and say, hey, this affected us. How can we as a collective begin to work towards healing this instead of just pretending it didn't happen and continuing to cope and continuing to move on with our lives? It affected all of us in so many different ways. And so how can you begin to assess how it affected you and begin to work on that? So the third thing that I kind of wrote down for you guys is the negative triple effect. Oh my goodness. The negative triple effect. The negative trickle effect of not leaving your house. Let's think about that for a minute. Let's just talk about that for a minute. The trickle effect of anything in life is huge. How is it that one behavior is leaking into another, I just read a quote this morning. It's a Benjamin Franklin quote that I read in the 12-week year, I believe it's called. And basically he says, if we take care of the minutes, the years will take care of themselves. Meaning what we do every day from a minute by minute, everything that we do in the run of the day, down to the minutes, is going to have a return somewhere down the line. It is going to impact us somewhere down the line. Also, you guys, I just gotta say, I'm butchering hard today. For some reason, the words aren't flowing, and so I'm trying my best. We're gonna get through, power through. Sometimes it's about showing up imperfectly instead of perfect and just trusting that and leaning into that. So also know that I don't really edit my podcast at all, so what you see is what you get. So if I'm having some 30-second blank moments, know that the wheels are turning upstairs, but nothing seems to be coming in. But as I was saying, when we focus on the minutes, the years will take care of themselves. Basically what he's saying is what we do, every decision that we make is going to have an effect somewhere down the line. Every food that you eat, every show you consume, every thought that you have, every action you take, every habit that you do, it's going to directly correlate to an outcome somewhere down the line. But because humans are so good at just living in that short-term pleasure, not really knowing the significance of our decisions, not really bringing awareness to how they're going to affect us down the line, we push taking action hard things that we don't want to do. We're really good at pushing them away because we're like, oh, we'll do them later. We'll take care of them later. We'll do it tomorrow. Blah, 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 whatever. What if instead we began to hyper-focus on how everything we do from minute to minute is going to affect us hour by hour, week by week, month by month, year by year? And so what I meant by this point of how that can burn us out is because the trickle effect of working from home versus going into office. So for example, you start your day by sleeping in, or you get up. I remember I started work at 7:30. I would get up at like 7:25 and brush my teeth, maybe grab a cup of coffee and walk into my office. That is a terrible, terrible way to start your day. But so many of us did that because we could. I probably wouldn't get dressed some days until like 10. I'd be hammering emails in my pajamas for the first 2-3 hours of my day. Just okay with that. Because we could, right? And it was, again, it was fun for a time. It was fun for a couple months because it was something different. We're like, yes, vacation, this is sick. Without realizing how much that was then negatively affecting the rest of the day. I wasn't properly setting myself up. I wasn't getting into flow. I had no routine. And so that was then trickling into not really taking as good a care of myself as possible. I wasn't getting into the mindset of getting dressed and getting ready and feeling good. How we dress, how we eat, how we do all those things, they affect us on a day-to-day basis. And then more so of that, it led into, well, I don't want to leave the house because I'm comfortable, and so then I wouldn't go to the gym. I wouldn't really go for walks. I wouldn't go connect with people. When we're home and we're comfortable being home, we're really good at just staying there, right? We're really good at staying where it's comfortable. And so then not knowing the effect of that, okay, well then how's that going to affect me psychologically? How's that going to affect my health? How's that going to affect me tomorrow? We don't think in that way. But I do think that there is such a negative trickle effect of working from home that until you identify your routine and stick to a routine, it can actually be a very toxic, unhealthy cycle to be in. People joke all the time, business up top, pajamas on the bottom, which is great. It's fantastic. I think it's funny. However, are you correlating how that could actually be negatively affecting you? Are you correlating that one decision could be leading you into feeling depressed 6 months down the road? Because if that's how you're showing up and then you're not taking care of yourself and you're not moving your body and you're not nourishing your body, inevitably over time, as that compounds, that could lead to you feeling like shit. But you're never going to correlate that with, oh, because I showed up to work in my pajamas. We must begin to correlate how every decision and action that we do is going to affect us and trickle into something bigger than that. I think a large reason why we're burnt out is because we're not associating those things together. We're living just day to day. Working from home, I feel in so many ways allows us to the biggest word I can think of is comfort, comfortable. That is the biggest word I can think of when I think of working from home. We're like these robots going through the motions of one thing to the next, versus when you're in office, you're kind of just like, think of how much time you spend walking around the hallways or talking to your coworkers or going out for coffee or insert thing here. It's just a completely different way of being that humans weren't really necessarily designed for. Now, I think it's great in a way, and it serves us in so many ways. But when we were taught and grown up to get up and get ready and go to school and come home and do your homework, and we had those set motions, to then flip into a reality of it being, you're staying in this one place, figure it out. Think of how much less flow we have, how much less creativity we have, how much our quality of life actually decreased in a lot of ways. I think in the beginning we hyper-focused on all the ways that it was fantastic, but we also have to hold the duality of how that could also negatively be affecting us. But knowing that if we bring in a proper routine and we take care of ourselves and we're aware of these things, working from home is one of the best things in the world because it allows us to be efficient. It allows us to have a better quality of life, but only if we're not allowing some of those other major things to kind of slide under the rug. So a couple things I wrote down, like if you can, work at a coffee shop every now and again. Just change your scenery. Set up one working space and try to work there 99% of the time. Get ready like you are going to be leaving the house. Wake up and shower and brush your teeth and get ready like you're going to go somewhere. Get outside, move your body, work on building a support system, and assess your mental health and burnout frequently, if not daily, checking in with yourself. I know that in the last 2 years, I think I've taken 3 sick days, maybe 2 vacation days in 2 years. And I know that a lot of that is because I get to work from home. And so I don't really feel the need to sometimes, but I have to remember that, okay, because I'm not taking that intentional time off, part of my brain is always in work mode. And so being able to assess that for yourself on a daily basis and still taking time off is going to be huge. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Full transparency, I know it was a little chaotic. We were a little all over the place. We're grinding through. We push through, we power through. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I would encourage you guys to assess for yourself what is maybe one of the biggest reasons you might be feeling burnout. Maybe it is one of these. Maybe you have a hard time disconnecting. Maybe you're missing that environment that is supporting of you. Maybe that negative trickle effect is impacting you more than you realized. And again, maybe you're going into office and this negative trickle effect is still impacting you. So being able to assess for yourself what might be leaking into your burnout and then stopping it here. Noticing it, catching it, and changing it is the only way that is going to shift. If you love what you do and you don't plan on leaving that position, especially if you're someone who works from home a little bit too all the time, being able to assess these for yourself is going to be huge. Setting up a space and a system that works for you is also going to be huge. Never underestimate how things could be affecting you, and know that it's better to lean on the side of proactivity instead of reactivity and wishing that we would have done things sooner. So thank you guys so much as always. I look forward to chatting with you all on Thursday for episode number 140. We are going to be chatting about the hard truths, a couple hard truths. I actually have 15 in fact that's next week. Thursday we're talking about 15 reasons you're not healing. It's a big list. We're going to power through 15 reasons you might not be healing. That's going to be a good one. I'm excited. So thank you guys so much as always. All the love. I look forward to chatting with you then. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at Jessie Brown 13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.